Lord, we are grateful for the Scriptures. They are your words, and they are true, and we rely on them. They provide us, through them you provide us with incredible guidance. We pray that during this time, as we reflect on them, that you'll guide our reflections and you'll guide what I say, that all of us, as a result of our time reflecting on your words, might grow and might reconnect with you. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Patty chose this slide. Isn't that cute? I'm not sure that you'd actually see that sign if you went to Nazareth, but anyway, it's cute. It's cute. And the question is, do we really know him? Sometimes we say we know a person, and we say that because we take certain shortcuts. We get to know someone and we kind of size them up, and very quickly we put them into certain categories. This is a safe person. This is a person that has a great sense of humor. Oh, this is one of those. I need to watch out for this person. This is someone that I can really like. We do it. We all do it. We even, and perhaps especially, do that with children. From a very young age, we observe things and notice certain things, and we draw certain conclusions. Oh, this one's really good at that, or they're really athletic. They're really artsy. This one's really clumsy. Oh, he's got a great sense of humor. He's a clown. This one is college material, and we have all sorts of labels. And perhaps you can remember labels that were placed upon you as a child. Maybe it didn't have to be said more than once. It could be said just one time, and somehow that label just stuck. And unconsciously or consciously, we sort of lived into those labels, or lived down to those labels, or we live up to those labels. And as I was thinking about this, the thought came to mind that if we choose to share a label with a child or the child's parents, we ought to make sure, and we have a responsibility to make sure, that those are positive, life-giving, encouraging labels, because the Scriptures remind us in Ephesians chapter 2 that every one of us are God's workmanship, God's masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus to do God's works, which God has uniquely prepared for us to do. So that's kind of a mini message within the message. So maybe that's a bonus message. I don't know. But anyway, Jesus was no different, and that's really what was happening in Nazareth. He had been away for a while, and they knew from growing up with him that he was bright, no doubt, and they probably found out from a young age that he could be a good teacher, that he was a good speaker, and perhaps people naturally followed him, and perhaps they went so far as to say, well, he's gonna do something significant someday. They might have even said, well, he's one that could possibly put the little town of Nazareth on the map. And I would say, without a doubt, that we're interested in Bethlehem because that's where Jesus was born, and we're interested in Nazareth because that's where he grew up. But they had a certain notion of what and who Jesus was, and they thought they knew him, but they didn't really know him. And sometimes we can think we know him, know the Lord, but there are things that we haven't seen quite yet. In the case of Jesus, when he came and among them And they were happy to hear him read the scripture. They were proud of him. They probably remembered other times when he was a boy and read the scripture. And they were even happy to hear him give a message. They probably thought it was cute. But when he identified himself as the Messiah of Israel, as the one and only deliverer of them, the God's only Son, they really started to be amazed and shocked and critical. And the question they said is, how can this be? Isn't this Joseph's son? And if they had asked Joseph, who tradition has it had probably passed away by that time, Joseph would have said, well, I adopted Jesus, but actually he was, humanly speaking, he was Mary's son, but in reality he was and is God's son. That's what Joseph would have said. And so Jesus doesn't need to hear everything before he tells them and replies to what they said and what they thought. And he says, no doubt you'll say, do hear what you did in Capernaum. Do you remember what Jesus did in Capernaum? Capernaum was the place where Jesus healed the paralytic. You know, that where so many people were coming to him that they lowered him through the roof. And Capernaum was the place where, when healing the paralytic, he said to him, son, your sins are forgiven, which really upset people in Capernaum, the religious leaders, because they knew and they understood that Jesus, by saying he forgave sins, was claiming to be God himself, and they took exception to that. And he says, not only will you say, do these things, show us, but also, physician, heal yourself. You know, take care of yourself. Which, for me, it reminded me just what would happen 3 years later as Jesus hung on the cross. The crowd yelled at him, and even one of the thieves said to him, save yourself. If you're truly the Son of God, save yourself. And he could have, but he didn't, because he cared more about us. So the question is, can we relate at all to the folks in Nazareth? Do we understand their struggle? You know, this is a time when we live in a world, and this is the only time we have to compare. Perhaps we can read history, and we do, and some of us have more perspective than others. But certainly this is a time when tolerance is a key word, and everybody is kind of happy that you have your own religious thing, and that you're religious, and that you have your form of spirituality. And we like to think of that as, and all ideas and all ideologies on the same level, and all religious leaders being on the same level. But if we truly read our New Testament, if we read the entire Bible, we understand that that's not what Jesus said. He never said he was just like everyone else. He never said, I'm just another charismatic leader. I'm not just another one that came about to start a neat religion with marching out a sense of a code of conduct that if you do it, things will go better for you and your family and in your community. No, he said, I in fact have been sent by God, that I am his only son, that I am the door through which you might be saved. I am the way, the truth, and life. And people then, and people now, take exception to that. At the end of the day, you can look at Philippians chapter 2, and you can read where it says, at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Now, if we hold another view of him that has him just as someone we follow or model, and he's just sort of a role model, and someone else is saying this, he's actually the one that will evaluate your life and all people's lives, there's going to be tension there. I've seen it. I've seen it in people. I've seen families get divided over this. It's one of the reasons that families don't talk about religion. Do you believe that? If he's no more than a charismatic leader, then we are free to take his words and listen to them and follow them or not. But if we ignore his words as the only begotten Son of God, then we have to know deep down that there will likely be consequences now in this life and into all eternity. So that's what was going on there. That's what really got them irked and exercised. And Jesus could have backed off. He could have backed down. He could have just left it at that and said, I can see you're a little bit disturbed. I can see that I rattled your comfort zone. Just sit with that for a while. I'll come back in about 6 weeks and we'll take it from there and we'll see if you've worked through that. But no, he goes on and takes it from there. He goes on and starts talking about their enemies. He starts talking about people beyond Israel. He starts talking and he mentions this widow. And he said, there were lots of widows in Elijah's day. Lots of widows in Israel. And God could have sent Elijah to any one of them. But he didn't do that. But what he did do is he sent Elijah to help a poor widow that was starving and had one son in Zarephath. And showing that God cared not only for Israel, but he also cared for their enemies. And then he talked about Naaman, who was the commander of an army that defeated Israel, that God used to defeat them. And that was just too much. And he was also basically saying that somehow that God is even the God of the Romans who are oppressing you right now, and that God loves even them. And by this time, they were just seething. Because what he was saying is that you are chosen, you are special, God's chosen people, but that doesn't mean he doesn't love and didn't come to deliver all people on the planet. And they struggled with that. And, I thought about this, and I thought, well, how does that apply to me, into our lives, into our worlds? And this is what I came up with. Early in life, we discovered there are teams. There are sports teams, there are academic teams, there are political teams, there are ideological teams. And we affiliate with those, some of us. We may even wear their mark. We may wear an NY or a B or a D. We may watch a particular team's news. And sometimes when we do that, we so strongly affiliate with these teams that somehow our team and our identity are inseparable. So that when you attack my team, you attack me. And it becomes very personal very quickly. And sometimes what happens is that we make our leaders of our teams angels, and we make leaders of the teams that are opposed to our team demons. Do you know what I'm talking about? And we rationalize and we say, because this person is on the other team, then it's okay for me to criticize them in a way that I would never criticize a member of my own team or my own family, but somehow that's okay because they're not right. They're not on my team. And I think Jesus would say that I'm the Lord of all. And I think it's so easy to forget that Jesus is above it all. He's Lord of all, and which means that he's probably got something to say through my team to the world, and he's probably got something to say through somebody else's team. I may not be able to see it, but we certainly have to be able to listen to each other. And as people who are ultimately first and only on Jesus' team, as hard it is to understand all that means, it means that we're humble and that we're trusting ultimately in God, and we know that the answers to the problems of this human race lie ultimately with God, and that He has deliberately sprinkled the answers in the minds of people from my team and other teams. Does that make sense? I just wanted to say that. I think that covers that. So anyway, why do I talk about this? Because it can get bad. It can get really bad. Because ideas have consequences. And it's one thing when we criticize someone verbally, but hate is a virus, and it can grow in us, and it can take hold of us. That's what happened to these people. These were his neighbors. These were folks that knew him. But he was saying things, claiming things that were so offensive to them that they became filled with hate, filled with rage, to the point where they became an angry mob, and they were ready and they wanted to lynch Jesus. Really? That's what they were doing. That's the definition of it. And so we have to read what the Bible says, and when it talks about hate, it says, hate what is evil. It never says that we're to hate anyone. It says that we are to love, and we are to remember that the root of any hate is always fear. And we're reminded in 1 John that perfect love drives out all fear. All fear. And so we strive to follow him. I read a story that I'd like to close with this story. It's in a book that I read called Why Church. I have not read the whole thing, but I commend it to you. It's called Why Church, and it's written by a guy by the name of Scott Sundquist. In that book, he tells the story of a guy by the name of Mark who came to know the Lord. There was a guy on his campus, Mark's, as he was going through college, and maybe you had someone like this or have heard of something like this, but this guy would go around the campus, and all he would do, this was his evangelistic approach, he would go around and yell, "Repent! Repent! Repent!" And people like me, who, if I had been in college at the time, I would have said, that's never going to work. People are going to find that so offensive. That'll never work. Well, as it happens, one time he was walking by this lecture hall yelling "repent" as classes were getting out, and Mark came out, and the two of them were facing each other eye to eye. And this man who normally yelled "repent" looked Mark straight in the eye and said, "Do you know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior?" The dejected student Mark had no time to improvise. He just uncharacteristically spoke honestly and said, "No, I don't." And the prophet replied, "Well, you better get to know him. You better get to know him." Well, Mark took that to heart, and he went back to his fraternity house, his half home, and he found a Bible, and he started reading from the Gospels, and this is what he found. That afternoon, alone in my bunk, I read the most beautiful words I had ever seen. My life was one of deception. Jesus spoke the truth. My life was one of pride, posturing, and threats. Jesus was humble, honest, and vulnerable. I knew immediately that who Jesus was, I wanted to be. And what he thought, I wanted to think. I didn't know what it meant, but right then and there, with all the smell of stale beer in the midst of broken furniture, some of you know what we're talking about, I prayed something that basically said, I give up, Jesus, help me. And so I did, and he did. And he goes on to say that this one decision, this one relationship ended up transforming a violent lifestyle, helped him succeed in college where previously he had been failing, helped improve his family relationships, which were admittedly very dysfunctional. He says all of that faded in the background because now all I saw was the beauty and purity of Jesus. At the end of the day, that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about knowing him so well that that relationship can define us, can determine our direction, that can offer us a source of peace in the midst of a world that's often chaotic. I don't know where you're at with Christ. I don't know where you're at with Jesus, but I do know that the New Testament is very clear about how people approached him. There's no record of Jesus ever going back to Nazareth. There's no record of him ever giving them another opportunity. Why would he? You know, they were ready to drive him off a cliff. Supernaturally, he walked through them. I mean, would you go back? I mean, I don't think so. His own people did not receive him, it says. But to those who received him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the power to become and to live as children of God. Let us pray. Lord, we're all in very different places with you. And we do trust in you. And you've reminded me, you've reminded us of places where we fall short. But you've also reminded us that you are trustworthy. Oh Lord, help us to live in you. Help us to live for you. Help us to live through you this week and always. Amen.